Alrighty, welcome back to Musical Connections. This is our interview segment, Next to Connect. I'm your host, Zach Snow, and joining me right now from Springdale, he is one of Newfoundland and Labrador's premier music engineers. He's been playing music for over 3 to 4 decades now, and he had projects like Maximum 80, and he's released music under his own name, plus SevenView. He also founded SevenView Studios in the early 2010s. And he has produced music for the likes of Justin Fancy, Jason Benoit, Jenny Mallard, Robin Slade, Nick Earl, Fairgill, among others. And he is up for an ECMA this year for Producer of the Year. It is his second nomination in a row. And joining me right now from Springdale to talk all about that and more is my man, Clint Curtis. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. Congratulations again on your ECMA nomination for Producer of the Year, your second one in a row.
Thank you.
And how does it feel right off the hop here to be up for Producer of the Year for the second year in a row?
Well, it's always surprising. I used to think that, like back when I first started producing, I just kind of stayed away from even submitting. And in the last couple of years, I decided to submit because I felt like it was not just for me, it was for all the artists that I've worked with too. So it gets more exposure for them and it helps, just helps all around. It's just good all around. And because of the amount of people I've worked with in the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's good because you can get together and kind of celebrate the music together,
Absolutely. And you've worked with a lot of people over the course of the past 3 to 4 years coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. But you, just the people alone, you worked with tons more people from the people that I just mentioned, but we'll get to that later on. First things first, I want to go back into your early days in music. So what got you playing music in the first place?
When I turned like 13 or so, I had a friend of mine that I went to high school with. You probably know him, Armando Follow.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
We grew up together. He was the guy that actually started me off. He showed me how to play a couple of things I was interested in. We met in high school because he was from a neighboring community, South Brook, and we started the South Brook didn't have a high school, so they came to our town, and that's how we hooked up and started chatting and talking about music. And I used to go and spend weekends at his house, and he'd show me how to play a few chords, and from there, I was hooked right away. So from there, it was just a natural progression, and I haven't stopped. I'm still playing every day. I still pick up the guitar every single day. So the passion's still there.
Yeah, and just from looking here on from your office here, right here on video here, you have a load of guitars you've collected over the past 3 to 4 decades. And which one's your favorite, might I ask?
Probably that Telecaster there on the couch. That's a Mike O'Reilly Telecaster. And there's a lot of people that have those on the island. They're just magical. That one and a Les Paul. I'm a Les Paul guy and a Telecaster guy for the most part. But as you can see, I got probably another 18 besides that. Around 20 electrics there that I look at them like they're all different tools in my toolbox. So I use them all. I use them all for different types of tracks, so they all have a different character and a different sound. So depends on the mood.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Now, I know that Paul McCartney's a Les Paul guy. I mean, he's been playing like a Les Paul bass going back to his days of the Beatles. So I guess you and Paul McCartney you have that in common with each other. You're both Les Paul guys.
And a lot of other guys like Jimmy Page and so on.
So I just want to ask, who are some of your influences that really drove you to, pursue music?
Well, when I was just getting into music, it was in the later part of the 80s. So I was a huge fan of the 80s rock. And from the 80s rock, I felt like that was a really good continuation of the 60s and 70s. So I would get into, what was current at the time, like Bon Jovi and all those bands, Def Leppard and U2. That was all new at the time. It felt new. And it was really exciting time, very melodic. And that's my most impressionable time, I think, for music. And then when you research their influences, then you go back and you get into all their influences, like, bands that existed in the 60s and 70s. And so, and then I had the 90s as well. So I was kind of in between. I had the latter part of the 80s and then the first part of the 90s. Those were my most impressionable years, I think. And there's a lot of great music at that time.
Oh, yes. I would still imagine there's lots of great music still out there now, but a lot of people do happen to go back to the 80s and the 90s because just from my point of view, like I think the 90s and like the early 2000s really have some of the best music that I really grew up with. But also, too, like a lot of people still listen to 80s music, and that's really the decade that a lot of people go back to when you think of, nostalgic music.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of, helped me form my musical sensibilities, because in the 80s it seemed like every instrument had a specific part in the song and they all worked so well together. You could listen, you could hear everything, you could hear the drums and you could hear all the different instruments. And I can remember listening to You Give Love a Bad Name and from Bon Jovi back probably a year or two after that album came out, probably in 88. I'd say probably that was when I was listening to it. And I can remember at that time listening to the song with my, my Walkman or whatever. and like, oh, okay, that's what they do. At the end, they do that part twice. Why did they do that? I wonder. So that was right away I got into arrangement and I would question, and I guess I would study the music. That's just naturally how I heard music.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And one of your first major music ventures was a cover band called Maximum 80. Now, you did release your own material between 1991, 1992 to about 2001, 2002. You've been at that for about 10 years. And you also spent a few years in PEI recording music there before you moved back to the province in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So how did the whole Maximum 80 project come together, Clint?
So in our town, Springdale, again, when you're, how old was I then? I was probably 16 when we started that band.
Jeez.
And so you're just looking for people to jam with. And is there anyone around who plays drums? Anyone? So my first cousin, Andy Curtis, we grew up together, and he played bass. He started playing bass when I started guitar. So we were always together. And then I met another guy that played guitar. Probably would have been Armando, but back then it was a big deal, half an hour away. Not like it is today. Like, everyone has cars today and you can go anywhere, right? I mean, there was no such thing. We walked everywhere back then. There was no such thing as that. Anyway, it's so funny.
Really?
There was a guy here in Springdale that I jammed with, Mike Grenham. And then there was another guy that lived nearby that we knew could sing, and because I didn't start out singing, and then there was a drummer. And so we just got together and basically started jamming in a guy's basement in Kings Point. That's like about 10 minutes away. And from there, we just basically, someone heard about us and said, hey, you guys should play here. And so then just one thing led to another. So we used to play every weekend back then for quite a few years.
That's wicked. Now, what do you remember most about those Maximum 80 days that really, strikes home with you?
I think it was the freedom. I'm so glad that I did do that, because we were young, but also it was a different time than it is now. There was no internet, no cell phones. So when we hit the road on the weekend, it was like we were kind of free, and just spending the time with those guys and making music. And that's a very, very fond memory for me.
Yeah, things definitely were different, but the 90s, the internet was really in its infancy compared to 2024, where the internet is pretty much all on our phones.
Exactly. Yeah, there was very little internet. I can remember, first getting my first real computer and dialing into the internet.
and you connected into the Ethernet cable, and now you can just get your internet through Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it was dial-up before, right? It was phone line.
Oh That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was definitely before I was born. I can tell you that much.
No, yeah. No, I can remember that. But I didn't have a huge amount of interest in it until I realized you can record music on it. And then I was really interested. Although I did really like technology, but during that period I was kind of more into music, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the Maximum 80 project, you've opened up for big names, some of Canada's biggest bands ever. Some of them include the Stampeders, April Wine, and last but not least, Blue Rodeo, who are coming here June 20th as part of the Iceberg Alley Performance Tent.
Yeah.
Out of all those acts that I just mentioned, and you can name some more if you come up with some more acts that you've opened up for, what was your favorite act to open up for out of those groups that I mentioned, and why?
I would say it's hard to say because there's a couple different aspects to that. The one with the Blue Rodeo and Stampeders was in Grand Falls on the big stage.
Salmon Fest?
Yeah.
Nice,
That
nice.
was in 95.
Wow.
So that was a good experience. We were so young and we could, so by that time the band kind of changed too. There was a couple member changes and Armando did get in the band after. So there was a couple of member, lineup changes and stuff like that. But we played that big stage and that was really, really, really cool for that time. Then the April Wine one was really awesome too, because I'm such a fan of the band, because they were more like my style of music. They were rock and they were just so great. And so.
Yeah, for sure. The 1995 Salmon Fest, I believe I had Erin O'Mara on the NextIIConnect like about a year or two ago, and I believe she played that same festival. I don't know if Biscuit was on the go at the time, but I believe the Doobie Brothers were part of that festival too.
Could be. There was a lot going on several days. It's huge. Yeah, I know Erin from those days. I remember Biscuit.
Yeah, shout out to Erin O'Mara for all the great work that she's done in music, and also she's a wicked hand at the camera. I tell you that much.
Yeah, and a phenomenal singer. I always enjoyed watching her perform.
Now, from about 2002, 2003, you've mainly released stuff on your own, but you've also really like dived deep into the music production side of things. So, what drew you to music production?
It's something that I've always done, because from when I was 13, learning to play the guitar, all I had was an acoustic. And one of the first things I did once I learned a few chords was wrote a song. So I'd always write a song. And my very first recording system was a little stereo with a cassette that could record, and then another stereo with a cassette that can record. So I'd record on one, so I'd do my rhythm guitar and vocal, we'll say. Then I'd play that one and I'd record on the second one, put them close together, and I'd blend my voice in or blend in harmony vocals and a lead and make a recording of two. So I was multi-tracking with two. It's the same thing. And then from there, I got a cassette 4-track Fostex little one, and I loved it. And then I got an 8-track tape machine. Then I got an 8-track digital. Then I got a computer. And my first computer had 1 gigabyte of space on it.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
I did an album on that.
On 1 gig of space? That's insane.
Probably a lot more than an album's worth. So I'd do a song. I'd record a song on my digital, 8-track, and then I would transfer that to the computer where I would work on it and master it and mix it, master it. And then once I was finished with that song, I'd dump it off and then I'd do another one. So.
What kind of software did you use back then to produce that song? Was Pro Tools around at the time?
What's that?
Was Pro Tools around at the time?
I don't know. I used just SoundForge, I believe it was called.
Oh, wow.
Something like, yeah, it was like really old, but it was just amazing that you could actually record. I had a Boss unit, was a really nice unit, actually, digital one, but it took zip drives.
Jeez. Who even uses them anymore?
I know. And who uses CDs anymore? Hardly. But yeah, everything's hard drive now. But so I've always had an interest in recording. I never really thought about recording for anybody else. It was really just a tool where I could just express myself musically. and be able to record. But it's not that long ago. You know, it's really hard to be able to record a good quality album. Like when we did our album in 2002 or three, the Max 81, we had to go to a studio to, you know, you had to have money. You had to have, you know, you couldn't just get the gear yourself if you knew how to record. You had to have good gear, and that took a lot of money at the time. And that's not that long ago, 20 years ago.
That is crazy. Now, around that same time, 2002, 2003, you released your first solo album called Back to Life. And that album ended up getting you a showcase at the Juno Awards that year. So what was it like to be a part of Juno Week? And especially, like, you know, I mentioned this now because a couple of our acts were recently in Halifax for the Juno Awards, that being Quote the Raven and Fairgale. So what is it like to be a part of Juno Week that year?
Juno Week, yeah, that was great. Again, we're, you know, still pretty young, and that was in St. John's, so we had a great time. And it was, I think it was that week I met Brian, Lamois.
Oh, Brian Lamois.
U2's.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah.
Daniel Lamois.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'm saying Brian.
Were you thinking like Brian Wilson or something?
No. Danny Lamois, yeah, or Daniel Lamois, that's right.
Yeah, because he produced like the Joshua Tree and
yeah, that's right.
Did he produce all of U2's albums, or because I know that he produced the Joshua Tree and
not all of them, but he produced a lot of the great ones. I mean, Acton Baby and So I think the early ones were Steve Lillywhite, and then they were working with Flood, and then Daniel Lamois. I don't know where I got Brian from. He's a phenomenal producer, obviously Canadian too, really, and that was fun to meet him.
Did he tell you any of any advice on, you know, how to be a great music producer? What do you remember from talking with him?
I don't remember what we spoke about, but I remember he was very, very, very nice, very warm, very, you know, took a photo. There's a photo somewhere of us. I can't remember.
We got to find it somewhere.
Yeah, I got to find that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, about 10 years later, yourself and Steve Clark founded the SevenView Studios, which is based in Springdale, your hometown. Why did you want to open up your own studio?
I didn't. There was no plan on that, actually. It was just, I was doing a little bit I've always done recording, so it was just a natural progression for me, but I just recorded for myself. I didn't really advertise it. I didn't really think about recording for someone else, but again, it's a different time too. Even that long ago, it was a different time. But what happened was Steve he's from here, but he was in St. John's for a number of years. He moved back, and then he's a musician, but he's also into a lot of technology, and he's a programmer, and he understands the web, and so we kind of got together and just started talking about collaborating. He was like, well, he said, maybe we should think about combining our talents, you know, and doing music for people, and also doing like websites and programming stuff. And that, so I had an interest in that as well. So we said, yeah, well, why not? Let's try it out. So we tried it out for a year, basically just hanging out and started building it. And then after a year we said, you know, I think, let's keep going. And so then we incorporated, and we're still going. So I've also got a huge interest in the web side of things, and I like doing that as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, you've also put together a music project called SevenView with Steve Clark, and you put out an album in 2013, and one of the songs off that record, Sail Away, was signed into an LA music catalog. So what did that mean to you to get that kind of, you know, placement?
Yeah, it was interesting. I can't remember how it came about, but kind of got the contact information and just decided to submit. And they sign music for TV shows and movies and stuff like that. So I've had a few songs put in there. But the SevenView band, basically the whole SevenView Studios thing kind of came out of our collaboration. So we got together, and what did we do? wrote a song and decided to release it. And we're like, well, we need a name. So we came up with SevenView and for the band. And so we did a song. And then once we decided to kind of say, well, SevenView Studios is a place where you can be a web design studio. It can be a music studio. It can be, it's a place where we create stuff. And so from there we said, well, let's call it SevenView Studios and see where it leads. And so here we are. Like you said, it's 10, 11 years. Time's going so fast. We had our 10-year a little while ago, so it might have been a year or two ago.
Yeah, and let's not count the 2020 and 2021 years. To me, like, you combine them all into like one long ass 2020. But
exactly
around that time as well, you've really exploded as a music producer, even though you've been producing for well close to about 20, 30 years. But some of the names you've produced for over the past couple years or so, they include, of course, Nick Earl and Fairgale. You've done some mixing and mastering for them. You produced Robin Slade's, Lorna Lovell's, Damian Follett's, Jenny Mallard's, and Jason Benoit's tunes. You've also produced it for Justin Fancy, which really sent you over the top and really established you as one of Newfoundland and Labrador's greatest music producers today. So how does it feel? What does that feel like for you, knowing that so many musicians trust you to help craft their sound and help make a great quality recording?
I think I rely on the fact that it just comes natural to me to want to get the best out of a song and to do the very best quality that you can do for an artist and give them as the best that they can possibly take. And then it's up to them to kind of, to take that as far as that they're willing to work for it. Because, I mean, with Justin, he's a really, really hard worker. He's just relentless. And so I think that's what kind of, it's like adding gas to a fire, right? It's because you can produce something and it's, and you think it's a great, quality that can compete. But then you got to have the other side of the artist has to take that then and they have to put in the work and to promote that, and it takes a lot of work and because I know Justin is like that. So I think that's possibly why and the word of mouth kind of got around a lot, thanks to Justin as well. And also work with Peter Vance, who is a great songwriter as well, right? Very young, excellent songwriter.
Oh yeah.
So from there, I think that's it. And Justin and I work together so well. Like I said, it's like we fuel each other, which is great. Like being a producer is about being, it's like filling in the gaps. It's like, it's about collaboration. It's not about, this is how it's going to be. And, this is how we're going to record it. And this is what it's going to, so then it's my project. It's about me trying to, enhance to the best of my ability, their natural ability and their songs and their sound and their vocals, and they're giving them the world class. That's what I work for. That's what I strive to do is get better and keep getting better.
Yeah. Like, cause at the end of the day, they're the ones that are coming up with the songs and they're writing the songs and coming up with the arrangements for it. You're there just to add that secret sauce.
Yeah. I do help with the songwriting as well. And sometimes certain songs and arrangement, I really love the arrangement. If they send a song and it's like, if we move this part here and move that part there, that kind of collaboration. But it's also the sounds and it's also the, productions, technical side to it and everything too, right? So, yeah.
Totally. Now, one of the songs you ended up co-writing for is one of Justin Fancy's tunes that he also co-wrote with Jesse Slack that ended up becoming a song called Lie. And that song is very special to Justin and to you for a very particular reason. You worked on this with multi-time Grammy Award-winning producer Greg Wells. So what was that like to work with someone who has that kind of profile like a Greg Wells?
Yeah, I'd say it was intimidating, but it might have been just for a few seconds because he was just so open and easy to get to know. It's like after 5 minutes, you feel like you know him, that's the way he is. And so, yeah, it was great. We had some Zoom meetings and I learned a lot from him. It's because it's always good to you always want to be surrounded by people that have been doing something longer or, better than you, that have been doing that's someone who's more experienced, because then you're going to learn. If you ever, if you want to be, if you want to be the best in the room, then you're not going to learn very much. But if you got someone who's like, wow, this guy's worked with Keith Urban and, and the list goes on and on and on of who he's produced and worked with. So yeah, I was just there to kind of get as much information and glean as much as I could from him. So it was a great experience.
What do you remember most from your conversations with Greg Wells? Like, what is one thing that he's either said or, let you know about that will stick with you for the rest of your life?
Man. He was very complimentary, which was, I try to compartmentalize all that stuff. Like if someone says you're good, okay, thank you. And then I'll just put it on a shelf and then I'll just leave that, because I don't believe my own hype. I don't believe, but you have to have enough belief in yourself to know that you're good at something to keep working at it. Right. It's not about being the best, but he was very complimentary to me and said I was a really great producer. So coming from him, that was, it's good. It's good to be validated once in a while to say, okay, I'm not crazy. That is actually pretty good, So it's
yeah, and like for real, at the end of the day, we're all human. Like we're all like normal people, like you and I. And Greg Wells is like a young man from Peterborough, Ontario, that really made it big as a Hollywood producer. But especially and then what he's done now with Silly Cove Records out in Winterton. Having someone like that helping out our music scene will really, send us over the limit when it comes to what the Newfoundland and Labrador music scene could be.
That's true.
Now, on the note of music production, what do you enjoy most about music production? And further to that, how has it changed from when you first started it in the 1990s to now?
Yeah, so music production is just, it's always exciting for me, when I've never lost that initial excitement of when you open up a session and you're about to start a song. And so the possibilities of where it can go, that's always been the most exciting. Before the technology existed, I wanted what we have now, which is basically being able to change things as you go, which is why I think I've just naturally ended up recording all the instruments myself. That was never a plan. But I record all the parts except for like steel and basically out of necessity, because that's how I did it. I had a much bigger appetite for recording than anyone around me, so I naturally had to do it myself. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that for a long time. What's good about that is that if you have the session and you have everything in front of you now, I can decide to change something after the fact. Whereas before, you would have to have everything kind of hope you had it planned out and then get in the room, record it. Once the drums are done, they're done. You can't change them. It's all on tape. There's good about that, and there's bad about that. The good part sometimes is you're not overanalyzing. But the other side is if you have good discipline, you can really use the current way of recording it, but still have the flexibility of, so that's what I love about it. Being able to record, I've always wanted to record kind of in real time, because the first initial impressions of when you record something or sing something, the first couple times, it's a different freshness to it than if you overanalyze it and sing it a million times. By that time, it's like it loses something. So you want to capture the initial, but be able to take that then and make sure that it's as good as it can be.
Absolutely. Now, you've had a very long and very rewarding career. If there's one word or phrase to describe your career as a whole, what would that be and why?
I don't know. I think, I don't know what the word would be, but I've never really thought of it as a career. I don't know. I never really thought of it as that way. I guess it would be, I'm just being who I am. At least I'm trying to be as natural as I'm following the things I naturally love to do. And so I think that's why the passion has still been there.
That's wonderful. Now, I know you're definitely going to be working on some brand new music, not just for yourself, but for other artists as well. What do you have in the cauldron that we should know about?
Justin Fancy.
No surprise there.
Currently working with Justin right now. Yeah, we're working on some stuff right now. So that's what's currently in the oven. So we're working on a couple of tunes, and looking forward to working again this year, I think, with Peter Vance. And who knows from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine you're going to be releasing some of your own songs. We're going to get to one of them shortly here on Next to Connect following this conversation. Now, for people who want to find out more about Clint Curtis and everything SevenView Studios, where can they go?
You can go to my website, clintcurtis.ca.
And I would imagine you're on socials as well?
Yeah, even though a lot of it is done through SevenView Studios, would be through me, because I'm usually the touch point when it comes to music. So it'd be much easier just to search up things that I'm doing, and from there you can find out.
Yeah, so that would be like Clint Curtis on YouTube, SevenView Studios on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, Clint. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Musical Connections podcast. Again, you've been a guest I've wanted to get on for a very long time. And I really mean when I say it, like, you're one of Newfoundland and Labrador's best producers out there right now. Just one last thing before we do wrap up. If there's anything that you want to say to any aspiring producer out there, if they should get started and really want to make this into a career, what would you say to them?
I would say focus on the stuff that you have the passion for, because you're naturally going to do those and you're never going to stop doing those things. Being consistent, I think, is the biggest thing. That's like when it comes to playing guitar or an instrument, like 5 minutes a day makes a huge difference. Because I've had friends who played guitar, started when I did, and they kind of, they stopped for a little while, gave it up for a while, and then came back to it. And then they never really took it anywhere, not, if you're a producer, you want to produce people, you got to be able to keep practicing it and keep doing it. So for me, it's been time and experience, but it's also been, just being relentless. So it's what I want to do. It's what I think about. It's, so that's the thing. Consistency.
Absolutely. Well, Clint, thanks again so much for joining me on Musical Connections here. You have a wonderful day, and congratulations on all your success, including your ECMA nomination for Producer of the Year. Fingers crossed, huh?
Yeah, thank you.